Pro Day.
A pro day. And let's go to a pro over in Clemson, I think. We've got Jane Slater with us as we hit the lead block, and welcome her from the Pro Day. Jane, good morning. Thank you for being here. What can we expect from Trevor Lawrence as we are so excited to see him take the field for Pro Day? And that, of course, is at 10 a.m. right here.
Morning, guys. I'm excited to see you guys at the breakfast table again and start talking about this next season. And this is going to be one of the guys we're going to talk a lot about. I think the big question for a lot of people is, why is he even throwing? A lot of the NFL execs that I talked to and people that have studied his tape said, we've got enough film. Keep in mind, this was a guy that just 4 games into the season won the starting job and then helped them win a national title, dismantling Alabama that freshman season. So there's not a lot that they still need to see about him. In fact, one exec said, whatever he does today isn't going to change their mind about him. But the reason why he's getting this done, something that wasn't even on the books until last week, was because he's getting surgery on that non-throwing shoulder. You know, they have that 20-hour NCAA rule. They don't really get to work on the mechanics that comes with the gig. So the goal is this offseason, work on that stuff. And he wants to get to that as quick as possible. But I got to tell you, when you talk to a lot of people about him, they tell me the story about Trevor Lawrence is there is no story. He is the consummate professional, and a lot of people credit him with coming out and saying, I want to play football. That's why college football happened. He was leading the charge on the social justice initiatives. He's a guy that's always on time. In fact, one said, this is a guy you want to head up your Fortune 500 company, but also an NFL franchise. So he is impressive. There is, again, that question, why even throw if you don't have to? It was Ian Rappaport, my colleague, who said from his team, the answer is, why not? Now, I'm going to talk to Trevor Lawrence. I'm going to talk to Urban Meyer and even his head coach, Dabo Sweeney, about all of this today. He will get here at about 9 o'clock this morning. He'll do his measurements. 10 o'clock, he'll go through a scripted throwing session with his QB consultant, which is Jordan Palmer. He worked with another Clemson alum, of course, Deshaun Watson. And even Palmer said the one thing that is most impressive about this guy is he's enormous. He's 6'5". He doesn't typically deal with guys that are bigger than him. He's expected to measure at 6'6". 10 o'clock, I'm going to tell you why there's been 22 quarterbacks drafted in the league at that size, why it hasn't worked out for the others so much, why a lot of people think that Trevor Lawrence is going to be one of the outliers.
Interesting. Thank you so much. You mentioned Jordan Palmer, a super friend of the show. And Jane, I feel like you can't hear the name Trevor Lawrence without that name Deshaun Watson with it in the same sentence. So let's break it down. We'll talk to you throughout the morning here, leading up to that Pro Day, live from Clemson right here on NFL Network. The college career of Trevor Lawrence looks remarkably similar to, Deshaun Watson. While Trevor could be headed to the AFC South, who knows if Deshaun will even be there in 2021. Watson, of course, putting in a trade request. New GM Nick Caserio said he has no interest in shipping him out of Houston. I ask you, Mike G, can the Texans salvage their relationship with Deshaun Watson?
Yeah, if they can get him to the table. I mean, I think once they get him to the table and he gives them a chance to have a conversation, you've got a coaching staff that I think he's really going to click with. And Pep Hamilton, from what I'm told, was told that our plan is to bring Deshaun Watson back. And that is why Pep Hamilton took that job, because he wants to work with him. So he would like him, I believe. He would like David Culley, who he already knows a little bit. Lovie Smith's on that staff. That's another guy that commands a lot of respect, too, as well. And I believe you're going to see changes in the Texans front office. Jamie Roots, their president, stepped down. One of the problems that the players had was this is a front office that does not look like the locker room. The demographics are not the same. You know what I'm talking about. A lot of white males up in that front office, whereas there are minorities inside that locker room, and we know what those players thought about social justice, and we know that they were upset with the way the organization responded to that. Well, I think there's going to be changes in that, not the kind of stuff that we would talk about here on a daily basis, the business side, some marketing stuff, but big people inside that front office, but people that these players would interact on a daily basis. So I think that would be something that Deshaun Watson would be open to, being amenable with as he sees this organization continue to develop here. So, yeah, I think they got a shot, but it still might come down to Jack Easterby's there or Jack Easterby's not there. This is a guy that's been a lightning rod in that organization, and a reason why a lot of players are upset, because they feel like he's been given too much power and he's part of the culture that they haven't liked in the past. So could really be a yes or no. Is he there? Cool. I'm out. Is he not there? All right, let's talk.
Quickly, timeline on this. It obviously has to get done before the draft, either way, whatever they figure out. But when can we expect some?
It doesn't. It doesn't. I mean, it doesn't have to get done before the draft, but it would make sense if it did, because if you're going to make a deal, you're the Texans, and say, hey, let's say theoretically we're making a deal with the Jets.
What the picks?
We know where that pick is. We make a deal after the draft. We don't know where.
Well, the Texans are thinking there's nothing to get done. We have our quarterback, and he's going to be our quarterback.
Then we're going to do like a holding out training camp situation. Oof.
Yeah, it could get there.
Oof.
He ain't going nowhere. The Texans are saying. He ain't going nowhere. Exactly. You know, earlier in the show we talked about Russell Wilson, and I said Russell Wilson would love to be involved in the roster moves. That's just me speculating. It's not what he said to me. I'm pretty sure Russell Wilson would like to go to his team and say, all right, I get it, you guys pay me big bucks, but I need an offensive line. Go get me a Quentin Nelson, somebody like that can protect me. When it comes to Deshaun Watson, maybe it's also about roster moves. Maybe he was shocked that they actually traded away DeAndre Hopkins, but I do feel like, to what you're saying, I've been hearing that it does have to do with more than just the roster. It goes from the sideline to the front office. And there is this narrative that players shouldn't care about what's going on in the front office. Certain players earn it, though. Certain players earn that right. With his play on the field, everything that he dealt with this year, and still was one of the better quarterbacks in the league ever since he's been in, a consummate professional, on and off the field, the stuff he does in the community. Why wouldn't you want a guy like that to have some type of influence on the decisions that are made above him? You know, but you got to earn it, though. You got to earn it like Louis Anderson and Coming to America. You know what I'm saying? It took time.
Start washing lettuce.
Hey, you know, I was mopping like you guys, and now I'm washing lettuce. Next, I'll be on the grill. And in a year or two,
the big bucks.
That's when the big bucks start rolling.
They're already rolling in for Deshaun.
Now imagine that. Like, imagine if we were at a fast food joint, and I was the manager and I was doing my thing. Because I'm in tune with what's going on, I could talk to the bosses above me. I could say, you know what? Mikey G is always on his phone. He's always on his phone texting us saying my sources say that the milk machine is out, and according to my sources, it's going to be out for the foreseeable future.
Always out.
And Kyle's always drinking on the job. He's always drinking a Mick Martini, which he says we're going to eventually sell. I could talk to the bosses and tell them what's going on. The point I'm trying to make is, you got guys like Deshaun Watson. You want him involved, because they know the temperament of the team. And if you're listening to this guy, your team will be better off, for sure.
I heard that Watson wants the Texans to put flower petals wherever he steps. As he walks, he just walks with the petals like they're from Can they save it?
Yeah.
All right. I think this all comes down to one person. And we can talk about people in the front office, and apparently the training staff had nothing to do with it, but I think it's the head coach-quarterback relationship. I think one of the most important people in Houston sports right now, maybe ever, is this 65-year-old man who's never been a head coach ever, named David Culley. If I'm going to rank, Akeem Olajuwon's probably the #1 Houston sports figure, but Culley is right after it. That's above Biggio and Beltran and all them, because that man is the one, I think, who could keep Deshaun Watson in Houston. And listen, John Harbaugh comes out and he says, hire this man. He's an amazing salesman. That was the word that John Harbaugh used. John Harbaugh, who has an incredible relationship with his own young star quarterback, who has crazy credibility. If you are a salesman, then this is your ultimate Glengarry lead. If they can get them in a room, if they can get them in a Zoom, and David Culley can sit down and be like, Deshaun, listen to me. Talk to me. I'm here for you. I am not Bill O'Brien. I did not get rid of DeAndre Hopkins. I did not do any of those things. I love you. I have your back. Here's what we are going to build together. And he can captivate Deshaun Watson and say, never mind all those people. Never mind the owner. Never mind everybody upstairs. You and me are going to win football games on Sundays. If he has that sort of charisma in him and that salesmanship, I think that's the only shot that they have. If he doesn't, and they meet, and to your point, get in a room, and it's like, take it or leave it. You got no experience as head coach. I'm not impressed. Then we're into DEFCON 2 and 1, which I think involves him not showing up to training camp, going to Cabo, all of that stuff.
But at that point, then they lose their leverage a little bit, right? We're talking about trade. That's what we don't want to happen from the Texan side of things, right, Mike?
Yeah, I'm just impressed that Kyle used the proper numbers for DEFCON. Most people think DEFCON 5 is
it goes down when it gets...
He clarified that for us like a couple of weeks ago.
People often make that mistake. And listen, I've said this. I think they're at 3 now.
Okay.
I think if they get to the draft and there's no trade, then they're at 2. And if he says, I'm not showing up to training camp, that is 1. That is the worst possible thing ever. And I don't know where they go from there. Because then they're like, Deshaun's taking hits, and it's a disaster.
At that point, you have to move on. You're killing all your leverage.
Yes, and what the Texans have to do, and this goes back to your initial question about the draft and the timeline, they have to project. Is this guy serious? Okay, is he really not going to show up in late July? We have to make that decision in April because we don't want to go there because then it is DEFCON 1. So it's going to have to be a look into the crystal ball for the Texans.
But Mike, this has been so public and it has been so ugly that if you're Deshaun, how do you back down and walk this back now?
Because you like money and
you like the coach.
Well, yeah, I mean, but I'm just, you know, it comes down to if the Texans don't trade him, are you willing to part with, because this is not the past, the previous CBA where the team can say, well, we're going to forgive half the fines. That money is gone. It's automatic now. And that is a lot of money. And I know it's not just about money for Deshaun Watson, but that is a lot of money for every day he is going to miss.
Here's what I mean, Nate. They're lingering. Don't let it linger. Like, get in the room today, tomorrow. I know it's probably, make it happen now.
I'm caught up on these highlights, okay? You forget how good he really was. And if you're the Houston Texans, you're watching these highlights as well. Just play these highlights over and over. And then that will convince you to do whatever you need to do.
We also might be underestimating how angry Deshaun is. So I'm saying get in a room, get on a Zoom. He might be saying, no, I'm not doing anything with the Houston Texans. I'm not Zooming. I don't care who you bring in. If you bring in Vince Lombardi as head coach, I'm not talking to them. I want out. At that point, there's nothing they can do.
If it's unsalvageable, get him out. Get him out of everything.
What does that mean? Get him out? How?
Trade. You're going to have to get rid of him.
So you're going to someone's going to trade, and you're going to just give him for whatever pick they want. It's like if you're going to trade him, you need everything.
You need everything.
You need the King's ransom plus.
That's a fact. You think about what Matt Stafford was traded for. So if you're the Texans and you're saying, all right, I want to trade Deshaun Watson, it's not as simple as saying, hey guys, just give me an offer. It has to be literally the best offer we have seen in years, the biggest blockbuster of the last decade.
Yeah.
Which is why, by the way, and I did see John McClain, the respected Houston reporter.
He's got all the answers. I love John.
Well, yeah, and he said if they trade him to anybody, they're trading him to the Jets, and I kind of sort of agree with that because that's the most powerful first-round pick that you're going to get.
Mike, can you take a stab at it? Just I'm putting you on the spot. The trade price for Deshaun Watson, like what would it look like?
But again, I mean, if we're talking, let's say San Francisco at, 12 is their pick, all of a sudden now they've got a hole to climb out of because the Jets at number 2 can give Houston the chance to take a quarterback there that they can now start to build around. And I understand there's a big gulf between Trevor Lawrence and the rest of these quarterbacks here, but now you're at 2, and now you can dictate things, whereas somebody else...
Obviously, you're not giving him away, obviously.
No, of course not.
But is it like 4 first-round picks? I mean, what is it? It's something astronomical.
I mean, if it's anybody outside of that Jets pick, it's 3, right? Because now you need the capital if you want to get up into that realm, whether it's this year or next year. And there are other veteran quarterbacks you can maybe swap with the team. I get it, but nobody is getting that Houston's not getting the better end of the deal if they're swapping their veteran quarterback.
Send him like an I choose you Valentine.